Bam.
Hi, I'm Greg McGowen, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Oh, this is how we do it. I am recording from the marina. This is John's studio. I've got a little bit of a lighting issue that I'm going to work on while I'm here. But in the meantime, what's important is my buddy Greg McGowen is on the show. And Greg and I, we deployed to Bosnia together, and we only recently reconnected in part two. And I want to throw a shout out to Mike Guardia because Mike is writing a book about our deployment, the Delta Company 165th MI Battalion's deployment as part of I-4. So we deployed as a company of counterintelligence agents and interrogators. This is not by design. It was just by happenstance, how most things are in the military. And so Greg and I just reconnected after like almost 30 years, or 25 for sure, of separation, because once you finish deploying, we both have different things to do and you disappear. And it was really at best pre-internet, and we didn't have a chance to connect. So we've only just reconnected. It's been fantastic. And so Greg and I were road dogs. We went out every single day outside the wire in Bosnia with our team, and we got to do some incredible stuff. And I can't wait to have him on because we're going to talk about spy shit, and it's going to be cool and fun and a little bit of a trip down memory lane for us.
Yeah.
What did we do in Bosnia?
Watched a lot of TV. No, that sounds like it. We were spies, and honestly, it really didn't register what we were going to do, what we needed to do, until we actually got there, got settled, and then we started working. I mean, this was my first big deployment, especially to a war zone. So I had no expectations. I didn't know what to expect. So it was crazy. It was surreal. It was weird. But for me, it was all basically normal because it was my first thing. It was my first time to do any of this stuff, with you. So, man, it's one of those things where when you're in it, it sucked. It sucked a lot. It sucked most of the time. But looking back on it, that was great.
Yeah.
So, in retrospect, I loved it. While I was living it, I hated it. So
I'm trying to put some light on myself. How is that? So, okay, it did suck. One of the things that sucked was we were a very small team, but we still had larger than a team's duty, right? So we've got to go out every day. You've got to write reports. Sometimes you got to go back to headquarters. You have to, even though we had hardly any support to do to the camp, sometimes you have to support the camp. Sometimes you got to maintenance vehicles. And there's just all of this work. And then, like, it might be like, hey, you have to go get that one big box out of our storage shed. And that's a mile away. And you have to go in an opposite direction to do something else. And that box is a 2-man carry. And there's just nobody else to carry it. And you can't go to another unit and be like, I need to borrow a guy because Pete can't carry this box by himself. Even though the sergeant major, like, that's a 2-man carry, there just weren't enough of us.
Yeah. 2-man carry. I remember that term. Yeah. Didn't really mean much of anything, but yeah, it was a 2-man carry. Yeah.
When you think about these things, when you think about the stuff that didn't matter day to day to our mission, what percentage in your mind was stuff that had nothing to do with us doing our actual job?
Oh gosh, that's a good question because I think it was kind of a 50-50 thing.
Okay.
And that's just kind of a just off the cuff answer there. If I thought about it, I'd probably come up with better percentages for you. But it did seem like we were working. We had a mission, at least in our head, and we were doing it. And but then also we kind of got to do some stupid stuff too. So and stupid stuff is great. I mean, that kind of, that's the juice. That's what keeps you motivated, when you can laugh, when you can goof off, and then you can get back to work. That's, for me at least, that's the motivation. If I can smile occasionally, then yeah, I can do whatever.
One of the things that one of our bosses said to us at a time of high intensity, we first got to Bosnia, we first did our first vulnerability assessment, and we're getting ready to present this thing to the boss, right? This is going to really make or break our bona fides for staying on this camp and getting to do what we want to do. And, we had this repartee that you and I did, and our boss, Sergeant Datchko, Bart, he's like, this is no time for levity. But it absolutely was, man.
Of course, this was the perfect time for levity. I mean, if there's ever a time for levity, if there's ever time for maybe a kind of an inappropriate joke, it was then. It was absolutely then. If not, then you melt down after a couple of weeks, you know. So you have to have that stuff.
One of the things that was great about our partnership was, well, first off, Bart and Gina left us alone to do the work. They guided us, you know, in whatever way they needed to, but it was really up to us to figure out our daily agenda, where we were going to go, what we were going to do, and then doing it. I mean, it's hard to sit there as an agent or an interrogator in Gina's case and watch someone else run a meeting, because it's from the moment you open your mouth, it's not the way you would do it.
Right.
But if you're smart, you know, I watch you and I learn from what you're doing. And then you watch me and you learn from what I'm doing. I know one of the things I learned from you was you had this like agreeable nature to you. Yes. Yep. Yep. And you would kind of encourage the conversation just by being agreeable. And
Right.
I've used that skill ever since.
Well, and I don't know if it's a skill so much. I was very lucky at that age because it seemed like whoever I met, I looked like somebody's cousin. I looked like somebody's nephew. I looked like somebody's little brother. And so there was automatically just kind of a rapport there that I didn't really have to work for. And see, the thing is with me, I don't like to talk about myself. If somebody asked me about something, well, sure, I'll tell you what I want. And I would probably say that sometime during the next hour, I'm probably going to say something that my family doesn't even know.
Right.
And so that makes it easier too. Because when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're trying to elicit information from them, but you're giving as little information about yourself as you can. And for me, that's easy. I don't really want to talk about myself. So again, that just came naturally for me. I can't really take credit as far as I trained for years to do that. No, that was just a genetic thing that's in my head. But I think that made me a better agent. That made me a better spy, if you want to say. So yeah.
When I describe what we were as spies, or if I say I was a spy or a combat spy, a lot of our peers get upset by this, right? They're like, no, you're an intel collector, you're information, you know, whatever. And they say like this downgraded version of it. But I've always approached it from, it's not up to me what I am, it's up to the enemy, it's up to the people in the village. And
Sure,
if you
yeah.
just start with the premise that they're not going to call me an intelligence collector or whatever it is, they're going to think of me as a spy, then it kind of, it freed me up to be able to say, oh, I'm not even going to hide this. I'm just going to be obvious about it.
Right. And it's tough because when you are talking about, especially military people, or I don't know, this is my opinion, it comes out sounding douchey. You know, yeah, I'm a spy. You know, so being a spy is one thing. Telling other people that you're a spy, I found it almost embarrassing sometimes. So I just sat on it. I really didn't explain it. It's like I'm a counterintelligence agent. And you've said in some of your past shows, people smile and nod at that, but they don't know what in the hell that means. So it's, oh, you're intelligent. Yeah, okay. Anyway, what's for dinner? It's one of those things.
What? Okay, so you don't like to say that you're a spy, and it's douchey. Also, nobody believes you. Right.
Well, exactly. Because that's the reaction you get. Sure you are.
Yeah.
You're a
Right.
spy. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it comes off. And so I just avoided it. And really, I don't even tell my family I'm a spy. Just since I started watching your show, that I started realizing, you know what? We were spies. That is what we did. So so this is a realization for me too. So
I'm trying to find some more light for my face. So this could be about me. Okay, so our day to day, we had to go out and answer these PIRs. But throughout my career, I realized that the PIRs are written in a vacuum. And PIR, for the audience, this is the information that people want. Where are the bombs? Where are the bad guys? Where's black market? All these kind of things. And these are literally things you cannot ask for directly. You have to basically, from my experience, never ask for them to actually find them. Right. So when did that realization come in for you? Because I remember like Dachko would say, memorize all the PIRs. And so you always had them in the back of your mind. But really what mattered is could you find information that no one even knew about? Or answer questions that they would have asked if they had known. Like it's our job to not only determine what the information is, but also what are the questions that need to be answered that no one knows about.
Right. Well, because the thing is, you know, the intelligence requirements, you know, this is what we need to find. But I'm not sure who was writing these requirements, because we would we would hear rumblings of things. We heard that Osama bin Laden was there, and we passed that along, and nobody really gave a shit. It's like,
Right.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. Just find out how many mines were there. And so, there were things as intelligence guys, we're giving the threat briefings. We're giving this AIDA training. So we know who this guy is. We know what he wants to do. He declared a holy war against the states in what, 92 or something like that. We knew what this guy was capable of, but nobody really gave a shit. So we just followed up on the requirements, but we still continued to try to find intelligence, or we stumbled onto intelligence that nobody was really asking for, I suppose.
One of the things that drives me a little bit crazy is first off, it's very hard to train people like us. And I think we were very fortunate in that our team was able to be active, which is not always, that's not a given, because counterintelligence is a weird discipline. No commander really knows what to do with us. And then it's hard to trust us because we can't investigate them. But there's also the fact of like, how do you train Pete and Greg to go out and perform their mission? We're likable guys. We're folksy. We can chat people up. And so we were naturally inclined to get this information. But did you feel like you were prepared professionally to go on this deployment?
No, absolutely not. But I like you said, a lot of this stuff, it needs to be OJT. There's just certain things that you're not going to find in a book. You're not going to get from a PowerPoint slide. Just some stuff you need to kind of stumble and learn on the job as you go. So, yes, I feel like it would have been nicer if we were better trained. But there were some times where shit, man, you can't train this. You can't train for this. So,
when you look at a tank unit pre-deployment, like a gallon of sweat saves you a bottle of blood and all that kind of stuff. We had nothing representing that in our training. We repeated training. We mostly drove there and did things all day. Mm-hmm. But what we should have been doing was just practicing conversations, meetings, source meets. Mm-hmm. But we didn't do that. We had like a week-long ConOps course that kind of talked about theory and, was sort of applicable. But what we should have been doing was just nonstop role play and just asking questions.
It's true, because just the nationalities and the conflicting nationalities, you had the Bosnians, which were primarily Muslim, and then you had the Catholic Croats, and then you had the Serbians, who were more Orthodox. And it would have been nice to know how to converse to the different cultures. I didn't. I probably still don't know as much as I should to be able to talk to these folks. But so we made it up as we went, and luckily it worked. I can see that it not working. I can see that blowing up in somebody's face, and then it's time to point fingers, I suppose. But for us, it just happened to work. We had that kismet. We had that little thing with Gina and even Bart. We were just all the misfits that, and then we just we made one cohesive team. Separately, I'm not sure if we could have accomplished anything, but you put us together, and we were the Iron Fist. And I'm proud of the stuff that we did. I think we did some cool stuff.
What did we do?
Gosh, you mean in a general sense, or gosh?
You can answer however you want. What did we do?
We I just like going out and you go to the coffee houses and you have really shitty coffee. And you talk to folks, and then sooner or later, you steer that conversation in a way where you can find out just a nugget. Because if you can get a nugget, it's a good day. And that's what we did on a daily basis. I don't think that we stopped any wars or stopped any espionage activity, but we did what we needed to do. And because I believed, and I still kind of believe, that was the mission. We were doing something productive. I know a lot of the leaders look back on us like these guys were just placeholders. I didn't think that then. I don't really think that now. I think we did good stuff.
And it's remarkable because we were really left alone to our own devices. It's like, here are some questions. Here is your area.
Right.
Have a great day.
That's it. No, and you can complain about Bart, and Bart is his own guy, but it seemed like Bart had this vibe where he had a team. This was his first chance. I have people. I can yell at them, and I can tell them what to do, and I can educate them. And all the guy wanted was a little bit of respect and a little bit of an intimidated reaction, and he was
Yeah.
fine. So I'm kind of a passive aggressive guy. So it's like, okay, is that what you want? Okay, here, take it. I'm intimidated. And we got along fine. He irritated me sometimes, but I'm fairly sure that I irritated him more often than he irritated me.
Yeah.
So Dachko, I got no complaints because he let us do our job. A lot of these guys, the NCOs would take the reins and they would do the fun stuff. No, Dachko would tell us what to do and then just take the leashes off. And wow, holy cow, man, that was fun. That was great, rewarding stuff. That really was.
He didn't put us in for promotion, though.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't have very nice things to say about us, but he left us alone. So hey, I'll take that. So yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I had so many NCOs in Delta Company, so many NCOs, and it was ridiculous because like here I am. I personally was motivated. Worked out hard. I PT'd great. I did correspondence courses. I went to all the soldier of the whatever boards. I organized a softball team, a football team, all these things. And every NCO who had me under their little command and everything all got excellent blocks for leadership. But they never saw fit to like, hey, Pete, you seem to get some of the, like there was no like, I never felt like anybody took care of me professionally, like the development mentorship side.
Do you think that's just a bad luck on the NCOs that you had? I mean, why was that?
Did you feel like you had a good NCO at all in Delta Company?
Oh, geez, man. There were good NCOs in Delta Company. I didn't work for them.
Okay.
But yes, there were good NCOs, and I would try to learn and glean stuff from the people that maybe I didn't necessarily work for. But Dachko, I learned from him.
Yeah.
And Kilgore, what a great guy. He was a great NCO too. And I learned from him, even though I didn't really get to work with him, but a couple of months maybe.
Yeah.
So I was trying to pull stuff from everybody, not necessarily who I was just working for, because that it wasn't gosh, when I was in operations, I did have some good NCOs, but there were good NCOs in that they were goofy.
Okay.
They would riff with me and they would get my jokes and they would laugh at the shit that when I was a clown, they would laugh at me. Hey, you're a good NCO. So I had that at least. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that there weren't good NCOs. I just got passed around a lot, and you shouldn't have 6 NCOs in 2 years. You shouldn't. Like that's too many.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, that's 1 a quarter, something like that. When I did become promotable, and I think we got promotable the same month.
We did.
We had backed way off on our pace of work because we had the area kind of wired tight. I mostly took naps. We all hung out with our girlfriends that we had found or boyfriends that we had found on the camp. And we really were kind of in slowdown mode because, we were going to go home soon and everything else. And I stayed away from the company altogether. And that was what got me, promotable. Like, they're like, hey, Pete's not been around. We're not pissed off at him. He's been taking naps, not doing his job. That's an NCO. And it's always struck me as odd, man. Like when we stopped doing incredible things, that was when the Army's like, now you got it. That's what we want.
But that's when we started doing goofy stuff. That's when we started, we put together the Rumba Yacht Club and we got that big inflatable pool and we started writing jokes on the wall. And you're absolutely right. That's when we got the attention. These guys, they're on top of it. Yeah. Give them this drive. And they did. So hey, whatever works.
I always tell people the best meal I ever had in a combat zone. I've had a lot of really good ones since Bosnia, but it was that smoked liver and fresh bread and beer that we had when we were getting ready to get those pigs for the pig roast.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And then the big pig roast that we did with the Croats, and again, that's kind of what I was talking about before. That big pig roast. And they were so into it and they wanted to do this pig roast and we were there for the slaughter and everything. And then we kind of realized afterwards, the only reason the Croats were doing this with us was to make the Bosnians pissed off because they didn't want us to eat pork. So it was just a constant thing, but it tasted great regardless of whether.
And we drank these wonderful beers. It was so refreshing right by a giant dung pile. but
Hey,
that's how these things go.
that's Bosnia.
Yeah. Yeah. But that pig roast, man, that was something I don't even know how we got going on that, but we just decided to throw a party for Easter and we were going
Yeah,
to use
yeah,
that as a means to go out and talk to people.
exactly. And that I still think about that. When they slaughter them, they hang them up by the back legs, and then they cut the throat so they can bleed out. And man, that is that sound of that pig that haunts my nightmares. That and because
Yeah.
it went on for about 10 minutes, and it's like, oh shit, man, this is terrible. But hey,
Yeah.
I think we all dug in and still enjoyed them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. But that was again, I don't think it was productive, but it was a good time.
One of the things is, and you wrote this great screenplay, and I don't want to get too far into that, but it captured a lot of what we did because we were always on the move, and Bart too, trying to find things that we could use or favor, like if we could gather some favor in advance of needing something, and this pig roast was part of that. Like, how can we do something great for the camp
Right.
that they wouldn't otherwise do? And then the next thing you know, the commander, this colonel, I don't know if you remember this. He flew in with his own like Heidelberg, helicopter resources. He
Mhm.
flew in near beer for this thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
And so we had these flyers like the pig is coming,
Mhm.
and like no one knew what it meant. And it's like people were like, we did this for this camp.
Yep.
Like we
Yep.
built this. We didn't have to do this. I mean, sure, it
Right.
was fun for us, but it was also a lot of work. But it allowed us to get the veterinarians off the camp. They could go do their job, and they were desperate to go do something.
Right.
We did this a lot of times. We had Kurt, our NWR guy. We wove him into things, and so that we could amplify people's experience on the camps that we were on.
Well, yeah, I think and that's what I tried to capture in the script because we got a chance to leave camp. Everybody else was very, isolated on these camps and the concertina wire and that sort of thing. And people would dream about, ranch Doritos and all that kind of stuff. We had access to that stuff.
Yeah.
So why not spread it around? And so yeah, of course. And I think after we got acclimated, we got used to the country and used to the people, then we actually started saying, well, yeah, we can push this back a little bit and let some of these poor bastards at camp and let them benefit from us being off camp and but sometimes it didn't work. Gosh, you go to those kiosks, they have these little kiosks and it looks like a photo mat kind of thing, and they sell newspapers and cigarettes and candy and that kind of stuff. And man, I was waiting for you, and it was just, I probably shouldn't have been standing around, but I went up to this kiosk and I said, wow, look, is that a hamburger? And, so I bought it and I'm eating it, and there's something dead around here. There's roadkill. There's something, I can smell it, and I'm eating the hamburger and I'm looking around and oh wait a minute. No, it's the hamburger. And so, that's about when you showed up, and it kind of be that big joke. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's just an anecdote, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're getting off the camp and also bringing other people off the camp with us, and just providing a greater value beyond just the intel, just being a good neighbor. Like you start taking care of those officers and they're like, hey, wow, these guys are all right. They got me off the camp, kind of thing.
Right.
Whatever, like, hey, I think we had some kind of thing where we, through MWR, we're like, hey, Kurt, can you get this? And he's like, of course. Yeah. And so he had like all these resources. He just needed a reason to get them. And we're like, well, get these things. And then we would get, improve the quality of life on the camp. We did a lot of that kind of thing. That's sort of what we were talking about. But yes, then we would wander off camp. I find it funny that first off, our team in its original configuration was two leaders with 9mm. You and I had M16s. And then Vegas, our interpreter, who was a Navy guy, he came with a 9mm. So you have 5 people, 3 of them have 9mm. You and I have M16s. And by the way, if we dared to shoot that thing, if we came back with less than one bullet, less than we're supposed to, oh my God. So let's not act like we were ready to throw down lead or anything. We could drive around the base camp cluster in 2 vehicles, or we could just simply walk off the camp and go wherever we want. And with no real radio comms, I don't remember us having a man portable radio that we took on patrols with us. Do you?
No, I don't think so. No, we were isolated. We were, and we weren't smart enough to know maybe how dangerous it was. I think, at least I wasn't. I didn't. So yeah. But yeah. No, that was. Gosh, it was a time.
When you look back, was it dangerous?
Um, I still don't know. The people that we saw, the people that we talked to, everybody was so welcoming, and everybody was
Mhm.
always willing to talk to us. There was a couple of times where people seemed like they were wary of us, or maybe just didn't trust us, but I didn't feel threatened by them. But
Mhm.
of course, the people that you're going to be threatened by aren't necessarily in your line of sight. So
Right.
so when we were in Tuzla or in Sarajevo or something, if they were snipers, if they were this or that, what we don't know is not going to hurt us, I guess. But I didn't know. But yeah.
We also focused on being good visitors. We didn't cause a lot of trouble. We
No.
we frequently took all of our gear off immediately. And this is where I kind of learned this thing. Like, I would rather be at their level. I'm not worried about what the commander thinks. My job is something different. And if I have to derobe and become Pete and
Yeah.
expose myself, then I think I'm better served doing that than being this geared up,
Absolutely.
creatine
Yeah.
filled monster.
Rapport is quicker without the Kevlar.
Yeah.
It is. And I think it's a common sense thing. I don't think that's something that we just learned. I think this is common sense. We take off the Kevlar, put the M16 down, and you talk. So
Yeah.
now Datchko was against that because he was a big gun guy, and he wanted to be armed all the time and locked and loaded really all the time too. So
He was also suspicious of everybody, didn't want anybody to know that he spoke Polish. This is for the audience. And he also, when he spoke Polish to his wife, like he'd be in the talk, right? And they had like an international line for us to call home. And he'd be like, and he'd be speaking Polish as quietly as he could,
that's
even
right.
though his fucking face is Polish, his name is Polish. You're like, yeah, of course this guy speaks Polish, right? And he did not want his picture taken. No, don't take my picture. Don't take my picture. So he was very suspicious in general. You and I were a little more, and maybe too much, but a little more lackadaisical, a little more happy-go-lucky, maybe.
Right, and probably a mixture of the two. I mean, if we found a happy medium between the Datchko and us, that's probably the smart place to be. But neither one of us were there, so we were who we were at the time. Because we were still kids, basically. I mean, I was a
Yeah,
little older than you. Emma's still a little older than you, but we're still kids, man. And a lot of
yeah,
times we acted like kids.
yeah. Let me take a moment to talk to the audience real quick. Hey, this year's Ride for the Brave happens from the 22nd of July to the 30th, and we're going to go from Temecula, Tucson, El Paso, Odessa, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans. That's going to be fun. Birmingham, Atlanta, and then to Charleston, South Carolina. If you want to join us along the way, please come out and see us. If you want to sit right seat with me and ride in my truck for a distance, by all means, we'll have a van. We're going to get you out there and hang out with us. We'd love to have your support. Or if you just want to donate, go to savethebrave.org. Look at events. You'll find the links from there. But it's called the Ride for the Brave. And I'm doing it this year in honor of my brother who passed away, a veteran from suicide. And as I'm here, I'm trying to protect my own life from these demons from war and PTSD and everything. Here, my brother goes down the same fight, and we lost him. So this fight continues for all of us, and that's what I'm passionate about. And look, if veterans and suicide is not your thing, and you care, but you're like, that's not my thing. Go do your thing in honor of my brother. Go do your thing harder. Whatever that charity is, go do that. And then also support the Save the Brave show or support the Break It Down show. Look at this link right here. You can get yourself, it's right down there. You can get yourself a spy shirt. How fun is that? And you can support that. So that money goes right back to me, and I put that right back into the show. I buy new equipment and everything else, get on the road and all those kind of things. Or just go to breakitdownshow.com, you go to the PayPal link, and just subscribe. If you subscribe, $5, $10, $25, whatever it is, a lot of people are doing this. And every time that money comes in, I'm like, oh, thank God I needed this. Now I'm going to put this into an ad. I just finished running an ad a couple of days ago that helped the show get some notoriety. So these are the things that you can do to help either Save the Brave or the Break It Down show. And I appreciate you guys doing that. All right, back to Greg.
And back that up. I mean, this is not a profitable thing. I mean, this is a thing of passion that Pete's doing. Yeah, I think it's kind of our responsibility to back you up. And I'm meeting you in Dallas, so I'm on the Save the Brave tour. So yes. So what Pete said, yeah.
What Pete said,
yeah.
One of the things I think, back to the question of what did we do? One of the things I think we did was we went into an unknown. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have intel to know anybody. Maybe you have a name like, Bozo Dorkovich or something, and you're like, oh, we have to find Bozo Dorkovich. But again, You can't go, where's Bozo Dorkovich? Because he's never going to show up in front of you. And so we didn't know a soul. We didn't know the names of the villages. We didn't know anything, right? We just ended up there. And then sometimes we ended up in Sarajevo. Sometimes we ended up on the top of a mountain. And you're like, go look around and see what's there. So we were always in these unknown environments. And what we did is we went out to those places and we kept saying, everything seems to be not dangerous here, sort of, and allowed like the unit, even if you don't go to an area that has a lot of action, or maybe there was action and we didn't find it. But we did realize over time that these folks were done, at least now, in fighting.
Yeah, but don't you think that a lot of the people who were done with the fighting weren't really involved with the fighting to begin with? That this was such an urban warfare thing, and we were on the lookout for these paramilitary groups because they kept splintering off, and they were still there. They were still operating even after the Dayton Accord was signed, and I think a lot of these people, they were just ready for it to be over. They weren't really fighters. They were just in their residences, and unfortunately those residential areas were targets, much like what's going on in the Ukraine. It's you're not supposed to hit those, but oops. I remember just driving in when we first came into Bosnia and seeing these residences, these not huge residents, but they're villages, and most of them don't have roofs, but there's still people living there. And that was a wake-up call. That was on the road into Bosnia. We could see those things, and that's really the kind of war that it was. So yeah.
Or the different houses in the neighborhoods and the hamlets.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, why are these ones all gone? Oh, they were the Croats, and we wanted them to leave. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter, Croats, Bosnians, whoever wasn't allowed to be there anymore was encouraged through bombs to get the fuck out.
Right. No, and that's it. And that's what made this such a screwed up war, is because there wasn't a black and white thing. It was a triangular thing, and even more so than that, there was just so many different warring factions. It was kind of difficult to keep it all straight, to keep it all. Now who's the good guy? Wait a minute. No, there are no good guys in this one. Right. So we just have to make do.
And then some of the brigade interpreters, they didn't work with us, but we often talked to them because they were very insightful. It's like, oh yeah, my mom was Serbian and my dad was a Catholic Croat. And you're like, wait, so you're a Serbian, Croatian, Catholic, Orthodox guy? And then they would explain how that. We also would say, like, how do you say whooping cough in Serbo-Croatian, that kind of stuff. But these were very smart, educated people. But they were now reduced to being interpreters that were sometimes used, sometimes not. And they had wonderful. And if I could tell us anything, I'd be like, go find all the interpreters you can. You cannot talk to them enough. Like, just get everything out of their brains as to where should we be going, who should we be talking to, and that kind of thing. We weren't given that training because that training doesn't exist to this day. We tend to look at interpreters as being stupid and a machine as opposed to an invaluable. I mean, these people lived in these areas. They knew everything.
Right. The granular stuff, the minutia stuff. That's where we got it. Was from the interpreters, of course. And we had Vegas, who was our interpreter, and then Elizabeth came and took over for him, and they did excellent jobs. But those ones that were ingrained in the culture, they had the best information. Yeah.
One of the stories I've told a lot, my buddy Kent, I go to his high school class every year. It's the high school we graduated from, and I talk to the seniors as they graduate, and he loves this story. And I want to know how much of this you remember. We were out talking to a farmer, and we were like, what can we give you? We have so many things, and they're like, oh man, you know what? Sunscreen would have been great if we had that. And we're like, oh, we have, we have an endless supply of sunscreen. And so we brought it back to the farmer, and that really opened some doors for us because this guy's like, you're treating us like humans. You care about us. And there's no amount of money or whiskey incentives or Game Boys that would replace something it's not even like, it's just, so there's so much sunscreen. It didn't matter that we took 200 tubes of it. It just didn't matter ever.
Right. Well, and that was kind of the case. I mean, with Intel, you have incentives. You have incentives to hopefully gain the trust of somebody and have them, share information with you. So, but the Army and their wisdom, I mean, our incentives were, Game Boys, were Walkmans, stuff that needed batteries, ridiculous stuff. I mean, my God, who thought this stuff up? When if you gave us a pound of flour, that would have gone so much farther than a bottle of Jack Daniels. I mean, so we kind of had to invent our own incentives, kind of.
Yeah, and believe me, these guys, they had plenty of booze.
Oh yeah, but awful booze.
Oh,
It was Schlevo, something Schlevo,
yeah,
something
or
like that.
Rakia,
And
depending on where
my
you're. Yeah,
God, it smelled like a fingernail polish remover. That acetone smell, and just
yeah,
every drink, it's like I'm going to go blind right now.
yeah.
And but then we'd have another drink, and we'd see if we did, and I can see okay for the most part, I guess.
Did
But yeah, terrible
did
alcohol.
did we drink too much on that tour?
We we drank more than I thought we were going to. Because there were sometimes on the when we were out and we were talking, sometimes let's be honest, alcohol loosens folks up, and so if you can have a drink or something like that, then they start talking more. And in some of the villages that we went in, this stuff was homemade, so they were proud of it. They wanted you to try it, and so you just kind of make the yummy face, and that was their motivation to share with us. But in your question, we did sometimes take a bottle back to the hooch, and sometimes and in fact, I think there were even a couple of fights, wasn't there? Was there a time when Bart and Vegas kind of got into a fist fight, and I think it was just alcohol fueled, because all of a sudden they're kind of rolling around, and what are they fighting about?
Yeah, they were choking each other.
They were, and it was it must have been alcohol fueled, but I mean they were obviously fighting about something prior to that. But
I remember, so the team had a lot of tension because what we were doing is very tense and dangerous, and Bart was such a fucking tyrant sometimes, right? So as great as he was at allowing us and learning and all that kind of things, he was also an asshole to us. In Vegas, also an NCO, one rank below Bart, but in the Navy, it's different. Like the way he gets the lead, he's like, I'm tired of him treating you guys like that. And that was him standing up for us. And then we had to go get Gina, and she came in and she locked it down as well. But she didn't say don't drink.
No. No, nobody really told us. It wasn't like Saudi Arabia where it's illegal and you're not supposed to drink, but you drink. Well, whereas this, that really wasn't something that we got direction from, at least from our leadership. So,
I remember one time it was an early spring morning. We were out and we were with the farmers, and we have as much gear on as you can have. We really didn't have the right kind of gear. We just had a lot of gear, and we were talking to this farmer, and it was just so bone cold, and we weren't wearing gloves, and he hands us these beers. And so we both kind of looked at beer, and we looked at the alcohol content, and it was 11%. And we're just like, yeah. We looked at each other like, all right, we're going to get warm. So, which sounds like we drink all the time, and we did. But we also had a bit of a system where I would drink. If it was your meeting, I would drink to be social and present, but I would maintain a grasp on what was happening. A part of my job, and you remember this, part of our job is to remember everything that's said.
Right.
And you lock in so hard that you're like, no. Then he said this. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. And we would take notes afterwards, and we'd still be hammered, but we'd still be taking these notes. And we still also had to be able to get the car safely back to the camp.
Sure. Yeah. And get through the gate guard, the gate there. And but and it was the case in Saudi Arabia too. And not to think that the counterintelligence is driven by alcohol, but it seems like I said, alcohol does loosen things up. And when I would go to embassy parties, and that's in Saudi Arabia, and you can't not drink, and people suggest, well, just walk around with an empty cup or something, and drunk guys can pick out sober guys.
Yeah.
So you have to at least have something on your breath. And with that said, you have a drink, you sweep the room, you talk, you go out to the car, you throw up, brush your teeth, go back in, sweep the room again. So, and that's just the job. So, for better or worse, that's how it works.
That's so much the job that it's codified in the law, the UCMJ. It's like these guys need to drink, because if I'm trying to find the most dangerous person in the valley with evil intent towards us, Nobody wants a shot of whiskey to stand between me and that person. They're like, yeah, you want a shot? Fuck yeah, I want a shot. That's always the answer. It doesn't matter if it's Ramadan and I'm talking to an Iraqi or, I'm
Right.
talking to a Bosnian farmer. You offer me booze, we're drinking.
Sure. No, and that's it. And you have to, because that's a guy turning down a drink is a quick way to mistrust. So
And on the other side of that, if they kill one of their pigs and they offer you some of their medium rare pork, you love it. You smile and you eat it.
you
You're
have
like,
to.
it's the best
No,
medium rare pork I've ever had.
absolutely. No, you have to, and you have to like it, at least on your face. So, no, that's true, and that's just. I don't know. I just think that's respect. I think that's hospitality. You're appreciating what they're trying to do for you. So I think that's just polite. I mean, that's part of the job too. But as a human being, shit, man, that's what you do when somebody tries to do something for you or offers you a favor or something like that. So yeah, you got to be nice.
When you look at your whole career as a collector, and you haven't spent the last 30 years just doing this job, but was Bosnia the peak in terms of doing the job and being in the moment and just being left to our own devices? Or was there a time where you're like Saudi Arabia, that was sweeter? Or now you're an investigator, is that sweeter? When was the peak, would you say, of your
It
professional
was
experience?
Bosnia. Yeah, it was Bosnia because Saudi was great. It was uh, um, the job was the same, but it was a little nicer. We had air conditioning. We had, instead of a Humvee, we had a GMC. We had like a nice SUV, that kind of stuff. So it
Yeah.
was a little bit more luxurious. But
Hmm.
as far as that juice, as far as the satisfaction, the reward, Bosnia really hit it for me, I think. And maybe that was because it was our first deployment, our first time at war, and maybe that's what elevated it. But yeah, Bosnia is the primary memory. But yeah,
For me, it came later because I went from being good and capable to being great, where I could go to a commander, predict the future, tell him what I was going to do, tell him what he was going to do, and then just be like, and then at this point, we're going to accomplish this thing.
mhm,
And the commanders just couldn't get enough of it because I delivered all the time. And I only delivered because I'd just done it more than anybody else. But my kung fu got so strong that I could go up to the battle captain. And battle captain, for the audience, is he's the dude in charge of operations. He's driving the ship, right? Because the captain's doing other stuff. And he needs to respond to anything that happens. So I could go up to the battle captain and say, hey, if a U.S. element was going to go into town with some Afghans and do some work to get some important information, but they were going to be solo and away from the camp, would you want to know about that? And he's like, if someone was to go off the camp solo, I would not want to know about that. But I'd want that person to have a radio and a call sign and maybe a grid if I could have it. So if anything did happen to the person that was maybe going to leave the camp, I could have their back. Because what you don't want to do, and again, I'm talking to the audience, you don't want to put that battle captain in a bad spot where he knows that an American is going off the camp solo to go do something that's really in the gray zone, pretty dark into the gray zone. But also, he wants to enable that person to be able to go do what they need to do. Because sometimes you don't want a platoon of dudes around you. You just want you and another guy in the family or that kind of thing. And so I got to the ability, Greg, where I could reliably do that and explain that to the guy and take the pressure off of him, but allow him to do his job if anything happened. And I could pick my spots in a way that you couldn't do as an E4 with one deployment under your belt. You needed many deployments. And the other thing I got to the point where I could do, then I'm going to shut up and let you talk. I was able to say, you were an important man here in Iraq. Maybe you're an elected official. Maybe you're a senior sheikh or a tribal leader. I want you to come on the camp as a VIP. We're not going to search you, and I'm going to feed you food. I'm going to bring you to my chow hall with our air conditioning and our delicious ice cream and muffins. I'm going to stuff your pockets full of stuff for you and your kids. And these guys would run to the camp to be treated with respect and fed.
right.
And boy, and just their presence alone, their phone would ring. And you could just, by listening in on their conversation, you could hear all the things that were going on in the community that they had to be part of that. Because they were the social network, the hub. And so it was such a powerful thing. I guess when I say all that stuff, that's where you can get to, right? You can get to that level of influence and command over what you do. But it took a long time. Could we speed that up, a better training? Or what are your thoughts?
Well, but I think Bosnia was pre a lot of stuff. It was pre 9/11. It was pre Google. It was pre cell phones. So it was a different vibe. After 9/11, I mean, that was one of the first things that I thought. As soon as you see that plane go in there,
Yeah.
wow, the job is going to be totally different now.
Yeah.
And it was,
Yeah.
and I think that probably elevated the risk, but it also elevated the reward for you. I mean, in doing this stuff, of course, when you're doing something great, it's better than when you're doing something good. And in Bosnia, there was a threat level, of course, and I think sometimes we didn't even give it the respect that we should have.
Yeah.
But post 9/11, that was a whole different threat level. That was a whole different thing, and and so I agree with you. I wasn't even there, and I agree with you absolutely. Post 9/11, that has to be more rewarding. That has to be that has to be. Yeah.
My brother-in-law Steve chimes in. Did your superiors ever test you to see if you were still on their side, or is that just in the movies?
Test you. I'm not sure
Like
if I
our
understand.
loyalty.
No, I've never. I know Bart would do stuff like that. In fact, God damn it. There was a point in Bosnia, and Bart was a scrounger, which is a good thing sometimes because a lot of times he was looking for stuff that was going to help us.
Yeah.
And he was scrounging around, and I'm not sure if I should tell this story. He was scrounging around because on Rumba there was a clinic, right? And because, like I said, because I paid Sergeant Rumba Dachko his respect, he came to me. Said, "You got to see this," And so I went with him, and we went into the clinic, and there was this bowl. I mean, larger than my head, and this bowl was filled with thousands of Valium. And Dachko was like a kid in a candy store, and it was literally, it was, look at this. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at, and so I was entertained by just his excitement. And so we looked at and he went over here and he found these cases of morphine. And there were the little ampules, with the sealed at the top with the glass. And he took a handful and he's, look at this, and it's like, okay, that's neat. It's like, oh, go ahead, take one. It's like, I'm not shooting up tonight. It's just Tuesday. So, but it's like, okay, I grabbed one, I put it in my pocket. That's fine. And we looked around, and actually, I think we found some stuff, some ace bandages, that kind of stuff that we put in our thing. About this time, we had laundry being done for us. And I'm a moron because I didn't think it was a big deal, but somebody found that little piece of morphine in my pocket. Do you remember this?
I do remember this.
And
I didn't know this backstory. I just remember that being a thing, and I'm like,
see,
that's not Greg. He didn't do this.
About a month later, Dachko comes to me and he's like, you blew it. You left it in your pocket, and I said, what's the big deal? It's not, I'll pee for you if you want. I'm clean. I just, I stuck it in my pocket and forgot. And
I remember this. Yeah.
You can never tell anybody. Ever. Don't ever tell anybody. And that kept going through my head. And then I think I was detained or something. I was brought into the CID and I was scared, I thought, I'm just going to have to come clean. But then these CID guys started talking to me.
I remember this.
We're interrogators.
Right.
So we know what to do. And in fact, I think just a couple of weeks before, we had interrogated the shit out of some poor guy, who committed a violation of some kind. But these guys started to interrogate me.
And they didn't know what you did. They didn't care to know that. I remember.
No. I had morphine in my pocket. This was their French connection. They were going to blow the lid off of this, and they tried to interrogate me, and they sucked. They tried the good cop, bad cop stuff, and they sucked. And they kept asking me questions, and all of a sudden, I wasn't really afraid anymore because these guys were morons. And sometimes I even wanted to tell them, if you want to ask me the same question over and over again, you should put it in a different context and reword it. Yeah. So maybe you can trip me up. So I let these guys go through their little interrogation thing. And finally, at the end, I wasn't really afraid. I was just bored because they sucked at this interrogation thing. And finally, I say, okay, look, I want an attorney. I'm done with that. And UCMJ is the same as anything else. As soon as you say lawyer, no more questions. So I agreed for them to inspect my body for injection holes, like in the fingers, the legs, the arms, the toes,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And they didn't find anything. And I told them, hey, I'll pay for you. Just give me something, I'll pay for you. I'll show you. I don't have drugs. I don't have drugs in my system. But they didn't want that. They wanted to blow the lid off of this right now. And it blew up in their face. And then ultimately, and that was it. That was kind of my morphine story, and a lot of that stuff I kept hearing the Bart in my head.
Yeah.
Never tell anybody. And I even asked him afterwards, Gina stood up for me.
She did.
And I'm innocent, but only kind of partially innocent and more stupid. And I felt bad because Gina stood up for me, and I felt bad. Don't tell anybody. So and really, honestly, this is the first time I've said anything about
Well, at least you've done it publicly to the entire world.
Yes, exactly. So don't tell anybody.
You didn't tell anybody. You told everybody.
So and it was just one of those things. And again, I was a kid. I wasn't thinking. I popped it, whatever. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I still don't think it was a big deal. But I think maybe it could be perceived as a big deal. So.
And to justify it a little bit, easily could have been that you would have been able to pull a vial of something out and help somebody, like
yes. Sure.
I mean, look, you shouldn't do that kind of stuff. But and maybe I dodged it because when we were on Lukavoc, Bart's like, I want you to go steal some of that plywood. And I'm like, I'm not stealing people's plywood. They need it. He's like, no, you got to steal it. I'm like, okay, I'll go steal it. But if anybody catches me, I'm just going to tell them that you told me to do it.
Right.
And he's like, don't steal any plywood. So I think he couldn't trust me, at that point. So he didn't include me in that stuff. But he did that kind of stuff all the time. And most of it was innocent. And here's Eric Kleinsmith, the commander. Glad I know that now and not then. LOL.
Sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But this is a good illustration of what happens when you're in war. Like, you're looking for advantages all the time, right? And we had access to the medical brigade, which means we had access to things, and you could make a deal for something or whatever, and you wouldn't want to have guys trading opium or
oh my gosh, no,
morphine.
No. And that was never an issue. That was never a part of our job,
right?
Ever. And even with Dachko, let me defend him. He wasn't. He was just a kid. He was finding stuff he'd never seen before. He was excited. So yeah, I don't mean to insinuate any kind of any illegal stuff. This was just boys being boys.
Let me do the other side of this story, because I was in Iraq and we were helping out the CI team, right? And they're terrible because they were trained up in 2 weeks to do the job, and you can't learn our job in 2 weeks. But they needed people out there doing it, so we were there to kind of help them not be fucked up. But they also didn't listen very well. And so they had these sources that would bounce camp to camp, which is not a source. That's a menace. And so you get rid of those people. And so this guy shows up and he's just sweating profusely, and his hand is like in his stomach, and he's bent over and he's clearly in pain. And they're having a full-on meeting with this guy. And I'm in the clear. I say, hey, ask this. And it's not my meeting, right? So, protocol, I should shut up. And I'm like, what's going on with this guy? He looks like he's in a lot of pain. And so the interpreter says, oh, yeah, let me ask him. He's like, yeah, he's in a lot of pain. He'd like to go to the hospital. And I'm like, well, what's wrong? He's like, oh, well, he was shot a couple of weeks ago and his stomach hurts real bad. And I'm like, oh, well, then let's get him to the hospital. What are we doing having a meeting here? And the agents are like, no, we got to finish talking to him. And I'm like, this guy's a source that bounces camp to camp. He's bent over and he's sweating. I'm driving him to the hospital right now. Like, well, we're not allowed to take people to the hospital. And I'm like, I'll take the ass chewing. And so we drive this kid. It's a little kid, like a 14-year-old kid. We take him over to the hospital, and they're like, oh my God, you saved this guy's life. He's got a horrible infection. And, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, yeah, you can't take people to the hospital, but here was a guy in a life or death. And I didn't know he was life or death, but he was obviously in serious distress. And so you have the other side of this too, where like we have access to these medical things, and I can understand Bart wanting to like, we have access to this, we can steal this stuff, maybe we can use it somehow. And we easily could have come across somebody, maybe not me morphine. I would never want to give someone morphine because I wouldn't know what I was doing, but to be able to give them amoxicillin or anything might have, helped someone who didn't, because they didn't have a working hospital, they didn't have sunscreen, they didn't have a lot of things. They'd had booze, but they didn't have most other things.
even just anti-inflammatories, even just Tylenol, for God's sake, any of that stuff would have been useful and would have been great incentives. But
yeah. Hey, you made a movie. Let's talk about that real quick, and then we can do other stuff after that.
Okay. And,
Talk about your movie.
Okay. The movie is called Teller's Camp. I went to college for acting, and I couldn't handle it. So I went on to other things like counterintelligence, and then I reconnected with these friends who were making this Western in Northern California, and this was during COVID, so production had shut down, and the movie needed some extra time. It was running a little short, so me and the producer started inventing this character, putting together subplots, iterations, different parts of the script, and after about a year and a half that we worked on this, he submitted it back to the director, and he said okay, and then we did reshoots just last fall, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. I got to work with friends from school, just playing cowboys with old college buddies. That was so much fun. But the thing is these guys, Michael Town and Michael Bolas, they're both in the movie, and I was friends with them in college. And these guys are excellent actors. These aren't just pals that I had. I mean, these guys are actors that I respected, and so the opportunity to act with them too was awesome, because it's like sports. It's like athletics. I mean, when you're playing with somebody who knows what they're doing, who's good at what they're doing, it raises your game too. And I thought it was great, and I got to work with those guys. It's in post production now. I think they've got it scored now. It goes through color correction and sound and that sort of thing. But since it is kind of a micro budget movie, this is a slow process. It's not a studio thing. You have to get vendors who are going to do this stuff for you, and that's what's in the process now. And I don't know when it's coming out, because I think they're sitting on it and waiting for film festival season to come up, and that starts right around September. So when it comes out, I'll come back and plug it, I guess. But for now, be on the lookout for Teller's Camp, and you can pull it up in the IMDb if you want to read about it. It's a Western. It's terrific, and it turned out good. I'm proud of it. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to give a quick advertisement on that. Thanks, Pete.
You can see in the link below, there's the IMDb link for Teller's Camp.
Yep.
Monitor your channels and you will find it when it comes out.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Later on this year. And any movie that's made is a miracle. So congratulations on your guys' little minor miracle. Yeah.
It's hard work. It is. But
one of the things that Greg taught me as an agent was this acting ability, because I was a little more open book, right? And then we were practicing the NCO Creed, and you performed it, and I'm like, I'm just gonna say no one is more professional than I, and be all serious about it. But then, I saw your way of doing that, and so I did that. I performed the NCO Creed as like a monologue, and it was great because I'd left the line out on accident, and they're like, anything you want to add in the end, then I recalled the line. And I'm like, I missed a line, and here's the line from the NCO Creed, and they were just like, "Wow, best performance of all time," But we also, so for everybody listening, I went to a course called the Counterintelligence Force Protection Source Operation course as my follow-on assignment. The next, and the Army didn't do this by design, even though Greg and I had legitimately run sources. I just ended up there because my girlfriend was in the Army, and she dragged me to Huachuca with her assignment. And so I ended up working in the perfect place you'd want. That place should have been stocked full of Bosnia guys who would run sources, right. But it was not. It only had me. And so the Fort Gordon folks, where Greg ended up going next, they're like, "Hey, why don't you come out and do a mobile training session?" And they're like, "Oh, great." And then Greg was there, and we reconnected. We had a great time. And I let Greg play some roles because I knew he could handle playing the roles. And we did this thing. We called it like the law enforcement breakfast. And so all of the agents would come in and they would talk to the local law enforcement for the area. And usually we did this, and it was a little more informal, a little lighter. Greg came in fully shooting. He's like, "These are a bunch of hay seeds," and playing like this sheriff guy. And it was great because the students were like, what is going on? Because we don't, even when we role play, no one teaches us how to do this. And you have to role play to be a good agent. You have to. And it was one of the things that I, again, stole from you and did. Like, I would invent these characters that you might meet, and you don't meet normal characters a lot of times. You meet actual characters. And so we had this kid called Billy the Squid, and he was a fighter, and he would walk around the desert looking for things. And that's how he found something at Huachuca. And he was an excellent source. But I had a captain who was kind of on like reserve status, kind of held at Huachuca. And I'm like, you need to really act this up. You need to act like you're a little bit bananas and see if they recognize you as a good source or if they blow you off. Because that was really the test. But I learned all of this from Greg. Like, you have to act. You cannot just go in there and be like, I'm Billy the Squid, and I found some interesting things in the desert, and I'm a little bit crazy. Like, you had to act it out, because the people you interact with in real life when you're an agent, they're weird.
Really, it's true. It's true. And it's a selfish thing too, because it does make the exercise a little bit more fun when you're acting. So it's a win-win,
Yeah. Hey man, well listen, we're at an hour, but I know I've got more questions. Do you want to ask me anything?
Shoot, no, gosh, I'm sorry. No, I don't. And I didn't even have anything prepared, because if I thought I did, I probably would have some questions for you. But at this point, Pete, it's been so long. It's like, where do you live? What do you do? Kind of thing. Just more domestic kind of questions rather than professional questions. But yeah, I'll start putting them together, and we'll do more of a Q&A.
Put them together. If you could tell 1995 Greg one thing, to include, hey, get ready. You think you're not going to deploy. Not only are you going to deploy, you're going to deploy to Bosnia. We had no clue, everybody. We had no clue. What would you want that Greg to prepare for? Like, what would you want that Greg to do just to give him a leg up? Because Paul Norwood isn't going to give any. Paul Norwood didn't know what he was doing. No. None of us did.
It's standard stuff, and I think it's even life stuff. You just don't give up. I mean, the more you commit, the better it's going to go. And really, even after my tour, I got out of the Army. And really, I sometimes I regret that. Sometimes I think I should have put in my 20, 25 years. And that's another thing. Don't give up. Just stick with it, because the juice is there. You just have to stick with it, and you're going to find it. And yeah, so I think that's the advice. Whereas I was a kid, I was bored, I was impatient, I wanted to go on to the next thing, and I should have stuck with the Army at least through 9/11, because that's just something that I felt that was my responsibility. I thought, I should have been there to do that job. So
yeah.
But no, yeah. If that answers your question, I think that's what I would say.
Favorite memory between Pete and Greg from the Bosnia deployment?
Wow, spades. We didn't have TV. We didn't have radio. We had nothing. All we had was a deck of cards. And some of the most fun I've had is playing spades with that guy as a partner. I mean, we would kill. And spades, we locked it up, and that was fun. That was our thing. That was what we had in lieu of any other level of entertainment, and it was entertaining. And I still think back to that. And I've tried to play spades with other people. I'm not getting the same thing. So yeah. That's a pretty stupid answer, but wow, playing spades with you, man, in the middle of Bosnia, that was a great time. That was a good memory.
We did have a good time playing spades. All right. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this thing up.
I'm good. I appreciate you inviting me on. It was good to talk to you, and invite me back. I'd love to talk more. And no, thank you, Pete. Thanks for inviting me on. Hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep.
Consider yourself invited. Hey, hang on one second. Hey, thanks for watching this show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours